Welcome to Permission to Kick Ass, a podcast about leaving self-doubt in the dust, punching fear in the face, and taking bold action toward your biggest dreams. I'm Angie Coley, and let's get to it. Hey, and welcome back to Permission to Kick Ass. With me today is Leticia Latino. Hi, Leticia.
Hello, Angie. So good to be here.
I know. I'm excited for this one. Tell us a little bit more about you and your business and background.
All right. Well, I'm 48, so that is going to take me a little bit.
We got time.
Well, all right. So, the short version is I'm a CEO. I'm a podcast host. I'm a published author. I'm a mom and a wife. But basically, my company, Neptuno, it builds telecommunication towers. So I like to think that we are one of the components behind enabling communications and making sure that everybody has connectivity.
Yeah, absolutely. Like bringing people together all around the world. That's amazing.
Yes, it is. It is quite. It can get a little bit, how you say, tense because it's a very fast-paced industry, but it's very rewarding. Absolutely.
Interesting. So what about it makes it tense? I mean, this is not a world that I'm familiar with. So assume I have no idea what I'm talking about here.
Oh, well, but let me tell you, you know all about it because imagine you when you have no coverage or connectivity. How do you get?
Oh, yes.
So that's the customers our industry serves, right? Like they expect always on connectivity and we forget the incredible amount of work that it's done both on the technology side and also on the workforce side and having the right people to deploy. Even it took COVID to name our industry an essential industry. You think about the healthcare workers, of course. You think about, policemen and firefighters that obviously are essential. But it took a COVID to realize that telecommunication workers are essential because where would we be had not had the technology we had during COVID?
Yeah, if the internet went down while everybody was stuck at home,
but they don't get the credit. We don't get the credit. Our workforce, unfortunately, doesn't get that credit. And I'm very passionate about, sharing that message that the telecommunications workforce is there day and night to make sure you do have connectivity.
Yes. Let's all collectively take a moment to celebrate these people that are keeping us in the internet, in cell phones. I am here for that. People are working hard to support us to make sure that you can even listen to this podcast. Yay. So much appreciation.
Thank you on behalf of my industry.
Absolutely. Share my love with all of them. I think it's really interesting that how did you get into telecommunications in the first place?
Well, that's a great question because I almost I didn't have a choice, but I had a choice because I was born into it. My father, founded the company I now work for, although I didn't go straight to working for him. As a matter of fact, I say I would never work for you, Dad. and then the rest happens, but that's another story I can share. But my parents are Italian immigrants that went to Venezuela in the searching a better future. And my dad is no engineer, no technical person. And somehow he started a company in telecommunications and They would be up and running for 50 years. And but I having seen that at home and that's all I, was around these telecommunication sites. There's a picture of my mom pregnant with me at a construction site, and she was wearing her high heels and her Sunday dress. And that's how my dad would treat her on Sundays. Oh, let me take you out for, let's go out somewhere fun. And she would always end at a construction site. And so that's really how I was raised. But I resisted to go into the family business. I wanted to be known and gain the credit for myself and my own accomplishments. And so I decided to start a career in Merrill Lynch right off university. And then I came to Miami to do my master's. And I told my dad, I'm not going to go work for you. He would always try to convince me. And the irony of it is that during my graduate program, I had to do an internship, a graduate internship for 6 months in a country of my second language, because one of my masters, I had two, was international business. And so you had to have a second language. And for me, it was English. So I got to stay here in the US, and I went to work for Nortel Networks, which at the time was one of the biggest telecommunication companies in the world.
Yeah.
And so that was very ironic, because then I ended up back in telecom, or actually in telecom. And I stayed there for a few years before deciding to come to the family business.
Mm-hmm. Oh, wow. That's so interesting. I just had such a vivid picture of date night at a construction site. Talk about just how entrepreneurship works in general. If you've got a partner who's an entrepreneur, you're pretty much in the business too, whether you're in the business or not.
Absolutely. Yes, that's true.
And I would say, that seems to be the same for a lot of family businesses. I know it just winds up that people work in the business. What was it that brought you to working with Dad in the telecom business, even though you told him you never would?
Well, I went to work for a massive company, as I said, 120,000 employees around the world. And unfortunately, I saw the demise, or I lived through the demise of Nortel being one of the greatest companies in telecom. So we went from 120,000 employees to 50,000 in a year and a half.
Wow.
It was brutal, layoffs everywhere. And, I realized this is crazy. I was working like crazy. I learned a lot too. I'm very grateful for that experience. But it made me realize how when you work for a big company like that, you're just a number. Mm-hmm. And I was very lucky that my bosses were saying, you're on this list, you're on the fourth list, the layoff list. They had numbers, right? So this is the first list. It will be the first chunk of people that were going to go, the second list. So I have bosses who tell me, you're on the same list I am. So if we're done, we're done. But it was so stressful time that, several things happened at the same time. One of my best friends, unfortunately, died. She was murdered by her husband, believe it or not, who then committed suicide. Very, very tough story. And he started to put things in perspective. Then a few weeks later, I broke off a very long relationship. We used to work in the same company. So I said, okay, this is my cue. I think time is coming that I'm going back home. And so I decided, let me just tell my boss, don't need to be putting me on lists. I want to go. I want to volunteer. So I took a very nice layoff package, and I decided to join the family business. I say, if I'm going to work this hard, let it be for something that has a higher purpose and mission.
Yes, yes, yes. I am cheering that on. Not necessarily the circumstances that led you there, but I also like to look at those kinds of really tough life circumstances, not necessarily as a blessing in disguise, but the roadblocks that are kind of pointing you toward where you really need to go. And just the fact that you said something that I think is brilliant. If I'm going to work this hard, I'm going to work this hard for something that matters, something that I can build. Oh, that's amazing. That's amazing.
It's and anybody out there listening to that, there's going to be lows and highs, but when you drive your own bus, is very empowering. And there's a big difference between, as I say, if you're in the bus that someone else is driving, you might be looking outside and it's not the sightseeing you want to see. You're gonna make stops you don't want to make, and all that good stuff. But if you're driving the bus, then you actually gonna eat at the restaurant you want to eat. You're gonna take control of the whole situation, and that's the entrepreneurship journey. It has its ups and downs, but it's very exciting that you get to make those calls.
I love that. And just thinking about how fast things evolve, how fast things change, because there was something that you said earlier about, watching this company just kind of go from one of the biggest telecoms to losing such a massive workforce. Just a reminder, guys, that this changes fast. I was talking to someone the other day about how it was 10 years ago that I was in my master's program and I was using a Palm Pilots.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, me too. I was a big fan.
I know it wasn't even all that long ago that we didn't have the smartphones that we have now. And people are like, iPhone, what is that? That sounds kind of, what? Why would I need that? And now that's a device that people consider essential, that they can't really live without. And I know the few times that Google Calendar has gone down, I've been like, what do I do with my life?
Yes. We are very reliant in technology. And just to close that loop, Nortel eventually went belly up. The company ceased existing altogether. It's not like they fire a bunch of people and that was it. The company really stopped existing, which is the biggest Canadian company. It's crazy. But in any case, yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, that just further reinforces what you said about drive the bus. You have more power that way. I love that you were like, I'm not waiting to be the fourth. And why would they even tell you?
It was a compliment. It was a compliment because the more removed you went from list one, it's like they didn't want to lay you off. But it was very stressful. And if I may say, I made that decision, and another friend of mine wanted a career change as well. And so we both decided we were going to volunteer, which we did, and we booked what we baptized as the layoff cruise.
Nice.
And so, but it was like 3 weeks ahead, right? So we thought we volunteer, we're going to get fired anytime now. So it's like 3 days before the cruise and we were both still there. And so I would go to my friend's cube and I say, have they told you anything yet? No, but we're going on a cruise in 3 days. We still have a job. And we had to talk to our boss to say, listen, we book a cruise to celebrate. So we need to get this done. And it was such a funny thing. We always laugh about it.
I think that's great. And, just tying it back to what you were saying earlier about if you're going to work this hard, like absolutely build in those times to celebrate. Don't let this run your entire life. I've seen so many smart entrepreneurs that I know that kind of fall into that trap of I have to work all the time to keep this thing afloat. And if you don't build time to rest and relax, your body will tell you it's time to rest and relax, and it will make you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think you hit up a very important point. If you saw my desk, I have a bunch of corks, champagne corks that I've popped, on special occasions. And that's one thing that, entrepreneurs, we do forget to do that. You're so embedded into what's going on. And the thing is, things will never be, in my opinion, completely good or completely bad. Yeah. You have to really live your life in this gray area where certain things are going really good and are very excited, and some things not so much. So it's very hard to find a good time to say, let's celebrate. But giving the pat in the back for every little thing. My husband always say, you always find a reason to celebrate. Well, yeah, I love champagne.
Why not?
I'm always going to find a good excuse to do that. But it is important to give you, pat yourself in the back when there's something good happening and acknowledging and pausing to reflect on it.
Absolutely. Yours is champagne. Mine is finding either a really funky restaurant nearby or some sort of weird experience because I travel full time. So like a while back, I did llama yoga.
Oh, wow. That sounds exciting.
Yeah. So yeah, building in time to celebrate. I mean, that prevents a lot of, I think, the mental health struggles that it can be so easy to encounter in entrepreneurship, especially when it feels like the pressure is on you to keep that revenue coming in, to support the team, support the family. I know that we were talking before we started recording about a meltdown. Do you want to go a little bit further into that?
Well, meltdowns are always going to be there. And I think, and bad experiences are always going to be there. And, when we were preparing for this podcast, I know that some of your past guests have shared experiences that have been bad. So there's one that I will share, and it's perfect because actually after I left Nortel, what I did with the layoff packages, I went for 6 months to France to perfect my French. And I completely took it as I'm going to disconnect. And when I come back to work for the family business, I want to be recharged. I want to be renewed. So I took time to do that. And so when I'm back and I start to work for the family business, because I had been working at Nortel, which it wasn't belly down just yet, I got introduced to a potential customer. And so it was going to be my very first customer. It was a huge deal, multi-million-dollar deal. I negotiated it on the office, on the main Nortel office, because they were providing the equipment and we were supposed to provide the towers. Well, long story short, this customer, was very particular. He was supposedly a millionaire. And I started noticing, sometimes there would be flowers arriving in my office, things, if you're a customer, you shouldn't be doing. So the first lesson there is, to stay true to who you are. So as a person, not because only I was raised Catholic and I went to all Catholic girls, but to me it was like, there's no crossing any lines. So I made it very clear from the beginning, please do not do this. But he kept, sending notes, sending this, inviting me places. I always kept it, at a distance. And well, it turned out that this customer basically requested money from us as a performance bond. And I convinced my dad, if we want to do business in the US, we have to risk. We have to, total go-getter mode. We have to do things a little bit different. And my dad said, yeah, but this is not industry standard. But the fact that Nortel was involved, I let myself convince, although my intuition was also saying there's something off. Mm-hmm. I wanted it so badly. I wanted to be successful so badly. I wanted to show the value I was adding so badly that I let myself be blinded by the whole thing. And so we ended up giving the money he wanted. And long story short, he basically stole the money. The project never happened. It was, we were prepared to ship a lot of towers. So we had invested a lot of money in it. It was very painful for me. We ended up suing that customer. And one of the learning things was my dad told my mom that day that we gave the money, we paid the money, he said, I wouldn't stop having my name if we ever see that money back. So he knew I was going to get burned, but he let me get burned anyway, because he knew I was going to learn a lifetime lesson,
Yeah.
Some sounds too good to be true is probably too good to be true. And
Absolutely.
This is, one of the things for anybody out there, starting their business, and there's people around that, and they paint a picture that's so rosy, when in reality, shouldn't be this easy. Then beware, because, so usually there's a red flag.
Oh yeah.
And then when we sue the guy, the most incredible thing happened, that in the lawsuit, he basically in, litigation, he told the lawyers, I wasn't in courtroom, that he did all that because he had a personal relationship with me.
What?
Yes. And so that to me has been the biggest thing to overcome in my professional career, because you see how low people would go to get, what they want, or to be perceived as, in a certain way. So luckily I didn't let that experience define me, but it was big learning moment for me. I'm glad I followed my intuition. I'm glad I stayed true to myself, in the sense of I didn't allow the gray area. I told my lawyer, if that's what he's saying, you ask him if he was ever alone with me anywhere. And, whatever he responded, I know in my conscience, I never did any of that. So you have to do the things that would allow you to sleep well at night. And it's a cliche, but it's true. You have to be at peace with your conscience and at peace with your heart in your own entrepreneurship journey. And bottom line, he's about to be convicted 20 years later. He was involved in a very, very big international Ponzi scheme that I'm not going to share details on. But so justice might be coming after all.
Oh, wow. That is such a great story. I mean, I was just writing down like nugget after nugget after nugget there, but there were a couple that I really want to highlight for people. One is that importance of trusting your gut. Even if you feel like you're new to business and you don't necessarily have the experience, in my mind, it's almost better to walk away from a deal that feels like it's slightly off. If you're not super enthusiastic about it, and there's that one thing in the back of your mind that's just like, I don't know if I like this. I don't know if I like this. Better to walk away from that deal and trust that another one is around the corner. And then I'm sure that this was painful at the time, but I love that your dad kind of gave you that safety to do it your own way, to follow your gut, to learn that lesson. Because I'm on board with you that is one of the best things that business owners can do, especially if they have a team, is let their team fail if they need to, even if you could prevent it from happening, because that is how people learn and get better and adjust. And to me, that's such a powerful lesson, like that with great risk comes great rewards. But if you don't risk anything, you don't ever get the reward, because you're afraid to fail.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And from what you say in the family business context, I think that has been one of the recipes for success for us, that my dad always empower us, even if it's not what he would have done. I always joke around, well, it cost you, the part that we couldn't recover at the end was like $75,000. We recovered most of it. And he said, well, I paid you for your master's. And I'm like, Dad, you had paid for my master's before. Well, then your PhD. And then it was cheap. It was cheap because your brother and your sister also learned from it. So it's a third of that. So he was always, not making those mistakes be very heavy, because they could have been. And for a long time, it was very heavy for me to live through that experience. But to give it full circle, guess what happens after I ended up with 15 towers built for this customer that was basically messing up with us. And I get an email from a French customer wanting some towers. And because I had just come back from France, I wanted to practice my French. And I responded. And then my dad and my brother is like, oh, you're just losing your time. It's impossible. But became our best customer. We sold the towers to the French guys. Thanks to the fact I learned English, I learned French. And out of an investment on something that seemed useless. This is the other piece of advice. Never stop learning. You can always better yourself. And even if something seems that you're never going to use it for work, or you're doing something, why are you doing a podcast if you have a full-time job and things like that? You never know where those paths intersect. And so I'm always been a firm believer of that.
I love that. I love that too. I'm not a very woo-woo predestined person, but I have seen it time and time again in my life, exactly what you said, where there was something that I think is completely unrelated to what I'm doing now. And it pops up into my head right now, and there's some sort of lesson I can apply to this, and it just works. It's crazy to me how often that happens, where something that you might feel was a waste of your time actually comes back and is the thing that was like, wow, this was really helpful. Or not necessarily even a waste of your time. Something that you did, like you said, you went to learn French and just disconnect and get ready for working in the family business. And then it wound up being the thing that helped you recover from this deal. Like, wow.
From my most traumatic experience. And that is a customer we still have today, all this happened in 2001. So 20 years later, this is something I'm still, it's a customer that we still have out of that experience. So yeah, I'm a firm believer that we co-create our destiny. And so the fact that you do something and you invest time doing something, you're co-creating the end result. And the universe is going to find a way to use that time and energy you're putting into something to put it somewhere in your life so that you make the most use of it.
Yes. Oh God, that's so brilliant. I love it. And there was another thing that you said that I really love, because I struggled with this before too. When I joined the marketing industry, just kind of at large, I want to be careful how I phrase it because I'm not judging it, but there's the kind of sales at all cost mentality side of marketing that I don't really vibe with. It's always felt a little bit icky, a little bit pushy. And at first, when I joined this industry, I thought that was the way I had to be. And then I discovered this whole, group of entrepreneurs that believe in operating in integrity, like you were talking about. I didn't even leave room for there to be any gray area with this guy that was trying to flirt with me. I have gotten really good through practice. I wouldn't say that I was good at this naturally, but telling people, I think there's a bit of a gray area here. So I just want to let everybody know what's happening right now so that we can make decisions and everybody's informed. For a specific example of that was that I worked with two teams at the same time that would often promote the same product, and they would be competing for sales. And so I would tell one team, okay, I need to recuse myself from this meeting right now because I know you guys are going to talk about the promotion strategy, and I am working on the promotion strategy for them over here. And I don't want there to be any misinterpretation or think that I'm passing things back and forth. And just by saying things like that, even though I think they knew that I was someone that I could trust, we worked together for a long time, but that left zero room for doubt. The fact that I was like, nope, I'm not even going to hear it. I want you to feel comfortable that you've got your promotion and that they've got their promotion. And I'm not the one that is being the go-between weakening either one of these. Yeah,
no, I think that's a great strategy. That's a great advice, to raise the flag and say, hey, I can stay if you want, but I think there's a conflict of interest or there's a gray area. I think that disclaimer, it's many times they will say, oh, don't worry, but at least you don't feel bad with it because you already disclaim it. So now it's on their plate.
Yeah. I think it's kind of one of those things that, like you were talking about, that feeling in the back of your mind earlier with the red flags. I get that kind of feeling if I think there might be some gray area that makes somebody think less of me or doubt the judgments that I'm making. And so whenever I feel that little twinge in the back of my brain that somebody might look at me sideways and wonder what my intentions are here. So I'm just going to let them know what my intentions are directly up front and let them make a choice.
If you are thinking it, chances are someone else is thinking it too.
Yes.
That's a good way of assessing.
Mm-hmm. And it turned out almost exactly like you said every time. 95% of the time, even people are like, oh, it's no problem. I totally trust you. But they trusted me because I brought it up like that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Oh, this is amazing.
That's a good story.
I've got lots of good stories.
I love it.
The funny thing is, for years, I thought, that I wanted to be someone like you. And I hope that you feel the spirit that I'm saying that, because I grew up hearing that you spend, years and years and years and you build your way up to the success and you get recognized as an industry expert. And that success is somebody that can say confidently, 25 years of telecom experience. I've worked with Merrill Lynch. I've worked with my family's company, Neptuno Group. I'm like looking at my notes here.
That's okay.
And I always felt like a failure because I was waiting tables and I was bartending and I was a firefighter over here and a lifeguard over there, and none of this stuff connects. And I have no path, no clear journey. But then, kind of like we were talking about earlier, a lot of the lessons that I learned from each one of those jobs has come back to help me in some form over my entrepreneurial journey. And it still resonates with a lot of people that I know that want to start businesses, but they're like, what am I good at? I've had like 20 million jobs.
Yeah, no, but it's that, and I totally understand that because I have the same thing, coming from the family business, where I invested most of my career now in the family business. At the very beginning, people, when I left Nortel, instead of asking, what is she doing? No, they were asking, what is she doing? Instead of saying, well, she's working for a telecom company or a tower company, they would say she's working for her dad. Mm-hmm. And that was very hard for me because there was so much more and it took me years and hearing people, and that created like a little bit of an imposter, which we all suffer from in the imposter syndrome we hear about. But in my case, she's working for that. Mm-hmm. How do you overcome that? No matter how hard I work, what I did, it was always like, or the family business. And if we were doing something good, it's probably not to her credit. It's probably because she's already working in an established business, well known. So it took me a lot of time to kind of find my path and my way. So we all suffer a little bit from that. But I always also think that we're all like plants. And when you put, that when they start growing, you don't see them growing under the earth. They are putting the roots and all that. And it gets to a point where we all different types of trees and plants, but we're all beautiful and we all contribute the same way. The fact that we have different shapes or different paths doesn't mean that it's not the same kind of journey anyway.
Oh, yeah. And I think that is great, too, because a lot of that development is happening, like you mentioned with the plant analogy, it's happening underground, out of sight. It's these seedlings that are pushing through dirt and they're struggling to gain the roots that are going to allow them to grow. And then often a lot of these plants, once they start growing, they just shoot up into the sun.
Yes. But and for all your entrepreneurs out there, that's what has helped me a long time is to imagine that, visualize that I'm putting the roots and planted the seed and that is growing. And then after years of work, when someone recognizes something you've done or praises you, then those roots have been planted there and well, and that work comes back to you. And you feel it. Now you can admire it because it's not under the earth anymore. But it takes time.
It takes time. And then exactly like you said, which I think is so brilliant, we're all different plants, but we all have a purpose. So your path looks very different from my path. And yet we're both here contributing, and we're both podcast hosts and we both have businesses. So we have a lot of overlap, but we don't do the same thing. And I think that that's beautiful, because I've encountered a lot of people, particularly that I coach, that feel like there's a one-stop shop that can own this particular slice. And I know I work with a lot of writers, but they're like, I can't specialize in case studies because this person already does it. Or I can't specialize in emails because this person already does it. And I have to point out, there are 8 billion people on the face of the earth, and that one person can't serve all of them. So it's okay for you to say, I also want to play in this space. Maybe they want to work with you. Maybe there's different ways to work together. It's not necessarily that you're entering their space and being competitive with them.
Yeah. Or maybe your own style is so different that, because people focus on the product and they kind of remove themselves from the product. But the truth is, whatever you're going to make, it has you in it.
Yes.
So it has your own particular imprint.
Yes.
And there's only one product like that because there's only one of you.
Mm-hmm.
So if you make it good enough and you work the angles and say, what am I doing that's a little bit different from what it's being done, even if the end product is the same, you're gonna find your audience.
Oh, I love that so much. I love that so much, because I don't think I can state it enough that people like working with people they like. So It's totally okay if your differentiating factor in business is that you're being you, 100% you. I know that I struggled to bring my business to life and I've had a lot of help recently, because there are authors that wrote like The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck and You Are a Badass. So that's allowed like permission to kick ass to not be such a, oh my God, in your face thing as it would have been 10 short years ago. Again, things have changed so dramatically. But I do remember hearing that, you need to be less, you need to be not so much. Don't show your tattoos, stop swearing. That's not how business people behave. And the funny thing is, the more that I was myself, especially at business events, the more I would see people literally like lean in and get excited. And we would actually build a genuine connection. So just by being myself, I've built my business a lot faster than I think trying to be some sort of professional version that other people want to see. And that differentiates me from a lot of other coaches, because people that like me may not like another person's style, or they may not like my style and they like that other person's style. And that's fine. They're getting the help that they need from the person that can help them the most.
Absolutely. No, and you're very, very right. It's my experience too. When you try to hide something or not to showcase something, it's crazy. I never used to tell my family story, like how my dad went from Italy to Venezuela. And because, again, I wanted to be, gain reputation on my own. And it was not too long ago, maybe 6 years ago, I gave a presentation and I found a very old picture of him, like black and white. And I found my mom's picture with me pregnant. And I started my presentation with that. Mm-hmm. And, telling a bit of the story, and people came after the meeting like, what an amazing story. And then I realized, how many companies are out there that can show the same people 50 years working the same, we've had a continuity that in telecom is not common. Even Nortel doesn't exist anymore. Yeah. So, so you had already that journey. Why am I hiding it? Mm-hmm. And then I started embracing it more. And it's been great, because then I realized that it doesn't define me, but the story can inspire others. And then if you think that Venezuela, where I was born and raised, it has had the worst 20 years what anybody can imagine. We are in the worst political turmoil. Mm-hmm. We've had to endure. I mean, our company has lost a lot just because our headquarters were there. And I was always trying to hide that fact too, so that the international customers wouldn't get worried that they're working with a Venezuelan company. Oh. And so it's been very challenging. But then after so many years, then they are realizing, wow, if these people can survive, and they've reinvented themselves, countless times at this point, to really overcome the hardship, the same kind of hardship people are experiencing right now with COVID, mm-hmm. where you might have been doing something, now you have to do something else. That, as a company, we've had done that many times, mm-hmm. just because of the political environment. So I think it tells a story of resilience, and that's very powerful.
Yes, I love that. I love how you took what could be a perceived weakness and literally turns that into a strength. Like, no, I know that there might be some people out there that think a Venezuelan company, ooh, risky. But then the other people are going to see, ooh, a Venezuelan company that's been around for years and years and years, not risky, because look at exactly what they've survived, what they've come through, how they've had to get innovative and ingenious sometimes just to stick around. Like, I love that. I think that's one of my goals in life, to help people see a perceived weakness and turn it into a strength.
Yeah, and to be open, because now to overcome that, I had to found Neptuno USA here in Florida. So that was one of the reasons why we eventually founded the entity in the United States. And not that we don't have international entities, but it was a point where we also have to come to terms. Whatever was the parent or the bigger child of these companies is not now needs help, because they cannot sustain what we were doing anymore. So we had to start from scratch. And it's something, to be honest, that I'm still doing right now. It's the US market is very, very hard to penetrate. So when you're here and you have 50 years of experience somewhere else, they tell you, yeah, but that's somewhere else, what you've done in the US. And you say, well, I'm trying to start, but it's not easy. We work with all the massive companies, and we are a small company here. And the reputation we have internationally doesn't count for nothing. Like, people evaluate you only like, if you are here, I want to see what you have here. So even opening a bank account, when you come from no past, it's hard.
Wow.
So it has been a challenge, a nice challenge, but happily you work it one day at a time. That's the only way to get around it.
I think you're eventually going to find the people, I think, that value that 50 years of experience. Because my opinion, and I've seen it happen time and again, but those people that really just look through this narrow window and this is the only thing that matters and this is the only thing that works, the train of history just runs them over while things are being developed.
Yes. And the thing is, to go back to how you develop this podcast, it goes back to, it just takes a lot of courage to stay your path, because you're going to see others that are not doing as much as you're doing, and they're getting ahead.
Yep.
And you feel like, I'm doing everything right. But, I see all these people doing stuff that I would never do. They're lying to their customers, not having a product ready. They're selling a PowerPoint of something that doesn't exist. Ugh. And yet they get contracts. And you, because you are, you've been there, you've done projects. So you don't want to lie. You don't want to say, I have this product ready when it's not. And so it takes a long time to be at peace with, okay, they're getting ahead now, but then to your point, they're going to be run over at some point. And and that's why one company is there for 50 years and the others are not.
Oh yeah. That's exactly what has the company there for 50 years, is people acting in integrity and in their customers' best interests, even when it's hard.
Yes.
Because I know I worked with a company for a while that made me doubt my instincts. Like, we're coming full circle here. Yes. When you were talking about the red flags, early in my copywriting career, I was working in-house as a copywriter, and this company would make a lot of choices that just didn't make sense to me. And I was like, how can you make that choice? That's lying to the customer. That's not a smart business decision. I mean, I might not have all the numbers here, but it sounds to me like we're losing money on that deal. I don't understand why we're making that. And I always convinced myself that they knew more than me. They knew better than me. There was something that I was missing that led them to make these decisions. Well, a year and a half after I quit, that whole company went under. 100 physical retail chain stores closed in a matter of months. And that really taught me a lot, to go back to what you were saying about trusting my instincts. And when I'm questioning something and it doesn't make sense to me, don't discount that due to, I don't have enough experience, or I don't know enough. These people have some secret that I don't. You might actually be spot on that they are not acting in integrity. They're not making smart decisions, and you need to go in another direction.
Absolutely. I think the mission, living your purpose and your life purpose with values and aligning them with your life's mission is super important. And I've said this before, I also shared that through the past 20 years, it's almost like we've had 20 years of COVID in our case, because it's political. Like we have a big factory who cannot ship out from Venezuela right now, like all these things. But, I say I could go and work for other people who would pay me a lot of money, but would I have the life I have right now? No. I can go pick my kids at school. I'm an involved mom because I run my own business. And I know that if I have to work at different times, I will do it. My customers trust me because they know that if I promise something, I always deliver. We always, as a company, deliver. That's, our motto. So I'll do whatever it takes to stay true to that promise. But at the same time, I have the opportunity to live more truthful to the kind of mom and wife that I want to be. And sometimes it boils down to that. If things were different, you might have a kick-ass job, as you say, or, that pays you great, that has a lot of reputation, but then would you be able to do the other things you want to do?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It's the power of driving your own bus.
Absolutely. Full circle, as you say.
Full circle. This has been a fantastic conversation. I could keep going with you all day long, but for right now, why don't you tell us more about where to find you and your company online?
Well, I'll tell you where to find me. It's something I work on during the pandemic, and I made my own webpage, which is leticialatino.com, LETICIALATINO.com. And I really what I wanted to achieve with that webpage is really that what we were talking about, having a place where people can get to meet me, not only the CEO, not only the podcast host, not only the mom. So it has a 360 on who I am. And, if you like this podcast, maybe you want to check out mine. I am hoping that Angie will be my guest.
Absolutely.
At some point.
Already,
back to basics, reconnecting to the essence of you. And it's very similar to, what we're talking and how you stay connected to what makes you tick.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's so amazing. I'm going to make sure that they have clickable links in the show notes. And at the risk of being presumptive, I think we have to do a follow-up.
Anytime. I love this kind of inspiring conversations are really what fills my heart. So I will be here chatting with you all afternoon long too.
Me too. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you, Angie. Thanks for having me.
So that is it. Another awesome episode of Permission to Kick Ass on the books. If you want to know more about the show, if you want to know more about me, Angie Coley, and the mission I'm on to help entrepreneurs punch fear in the face and do big, bold things, then head on over to permissiontokickass.com. That is all one word together, permissiontokickass.com. Make sure to sign up for my email list so that you know whenever there's a hot, fresh, and ready podcast episode out for you. And also on Mondays, I like to send out a little newsletter called Kick Monday's Ass. I'm sure you're totally surprised by that. So thank you for being here with me today. I'm Angie Coley. Make sure that you share this with a friend that needs to hear this message today. Like it, share it, comment wherever you're listening to this today, and let's go kick some ass.